Ladies and gentlemen, we've got another big update in regards to the tariff situation. It's been reported now over 70 countries ready to come to the negotiating table and talk with Trump on potential renegotiated trade deals, free trade, whatever you want to call it. It's really never free trade, but the point is to give the United States a better footing when it comes to their products in these countries, as well as keeping some of the tariffs on, certainly on China. You've got Donald Trump saying the 104% tariffs are going on because remember, he originally had a 20% flat tariff on them. Then he added the 34% tariff on Liberation Day. And then he said, if they're going to hit us with a 34% reciprocal, we're going to hit them with a 50% tariff by midnight tonight. And officially, those went on at noon, apparently. U.S. to proceed with 104% tariffs on China. That's according to an official. You've also got Trump saying prospects for a deal with South Korea looking good. You know what? You've also got, if I can go to this, take a look at the current situation in terms of which countries are going to negotiate first for a potential end to this trade war with some of these countries. You've got Israel, Japan. I mean, he just met with Israel and said it's probably not going to happen. I think it's bad optics for Trump to negotiate with Israel first, honestly. But, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. Japan, Vietnam. Vietnam took basically all of their tariffs off. Argentina, there's been reports of Malay and Trump doing this first historic free trade agreement. So they're on the list. You've got none by July 31st, which I think would be crazy. South Korea, India, those are two countries Trump's talked about. They've talked about potentially eliminating their tariffs on the United States along with other trade barriers. That's very important. You've got, I feel like, well, I mean, you're talking about lower tariffs. There's still going to be tariffs on China, no doubt. The reason China would be on this list is because they've ballooned so high to the 104%. It wouldn't be a shocker if, you know, in exchange for TikTok or something else, he lowered the Chinese tariffs. If China took their reciprocals off, then Trump would take the 50% increase off, we would imagine. But with the Chinese, we know it's all about strength. They don't want to cave into the United States. They've said what the U.S. is doing is bad. They want all the countries around them to band together against the U.S. It doesn't seem like that's happening. It seems like all of these countries, like a Japan, like a Vietnam, they are opting to negotiate with the United States rather than find other avenues like trading with the Chinese, because you cannot replace the U.S. consumer base. It is impossible. That's why they're not immediately shifting. I mean, this just goes to show you the amount of power that the United States has, because you're talking about tariffing every single country. So hypothetically, every other country could just say, screw this. The United States has completely lost it. We're just going to trade with each other. But they cannot. They have to trade with the United States. And that's why they're capitulating. And that's why there's going to be negotiations, and all these people who are angry, it's going to subside. The market will recover. And obviously, it's also very strategic in terms of, we're going to talk about the yield. Liberals now doing a victory lap because the 10-year yield has ballooned back up to, it's like 4.2%. It was 4.6. Then it was down to 3.9. Now it's back up to 4.2. That's because the Chinese sold a boatload of their treasuries, and now it's a victory lap. They're like, the 10-year yield is back up. This is a sign of a very unhealthy market. Well, no, the Chinese and other foreign countries sold all their treasuries, so it had a shock spike back up to 4.2%, but it's still trending down. And you need the yield to go down. You need inflation to go down. We're going to get the new report on the 10th, which is in 2 days, on the inflation rate. But the true inflation is like 1.2%. It's extremely low. It's like 5-year low at this point. This is back to like 2018, 2019 Trump vintage prime economy numbers. And so we're already seeing signs of it. But this is before any negotiations with these countries in terms of some type of new and improved free trade agreement, if you want to call it that. But again, I would say we're looking at Japan. We're looking at, obviously, Israel. Although, again, Netanyahu just met with Trump and there was no deal. You're looking at Vietnam, you're looking at Argentina, and Trump tends to do a lot of doublespeak in terms of these tariffs. It's a strategical move, it's negotiations, but he'll say, we're not going to negotiate, these are firm, and then the next day he'll say there's negotiations going on with many different countries. And he said yesterday or a few days ago on Truth Social, negotiations would begin immediately. So, but then we saw the meeting with Netanyahu. He said, no, we're going to leave the tariffs on, even though Israel took the tariffs off of the United States and committed to just getting rid of the deficit. So, I mean, there's a lot of double speak from Trump, but this is what we're kind of used to with him. China is whining They say the U.S. isn't serious about trade talks, and they're talking about intimidation, threats, blackmail, not being the way to engage. It's very rich coming from the Chinese, especially how much they've taken advantage of the United States in terms of unfair trade. This goes back to the 80s, 90s, not just Republicans, Democrats talking about it. Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, they all, I mean, you go back on the 90s, early 2000s, they all say it. I mean, there's videos of it. Republicans have dug them up. And so the Chinese are crying because of their reliance on the U.S. consumer base, and the access to that consumer base is being cut off because of these tariffs, and they're angry about it. And so they're like, you know what? We're just going to be fair. We're going to do our 34% reciprocal. Well, it's not fair. You guys have a huge surplus against us anyways. So we're just going to tariff you again. If you want to do a 34% reciprocal, we'll hit you with a 50% tariff. And I'm not even sure the 34% reciprocal has gone into place yet. I think it's supposed to go into place on the 9th, which is just such a Trump move that China announces. Trump hits China with a 20% tariff, then a 34% tariff on top of that. Then China says, all right, in a few days, we're going to hit back with a 34% tariff of our own as a reciprocal. And then Trump says, before you even hit us with that, we're going to hit you with one in response to your reciprocal that's going to be going into place on the 9th. Today, we're going to hit you with that. It's just funny. But you've got that. And then you've got Elon Musk talking about Peter Navarro, Trump's top expert on tariffs, and Musk has really got to calm down with this. I mean, with Musk, this is the problem with Elon. He'll act like a 5-year-old on X. And, you know, I like what Elon's done. He's definitely helped the free speech on X. It's great. But we don't need this. Let's keep this in within the administration. Keep it behind doors. We don't need Musk coming out here acting like a 7-year-old because he's angry about the tariffs. All these rich people are mad. There's a little bit of wealth redistribution going on, but liberals don't like wealth redistribution. I learned that yesterday. They said, no, we love the stock market. We love rich people. When rich people say things are going down, it's very bad for all of us. I mean, rich people are losing money. Liberals hate that. Liberals love rich people. I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but you understand, like, they're obsessed with the stock market now. It's all rich people. It's like 80% of the assets are owned by 5% of the people when it comes to the stock market and just stocks in general. But Musk is complaining. He's whining about it. We come on with this. But again, it's like 3-year-olds. Oh, he's dumb. Come on. But the administration needs to rein Musk in a little bit. And it's just like Trump has committed to this. This is a big part of his administration. You need to be on board with it. You know, and Musk has done a lot. I agree. It's important, but it's just like it gets annoying after a little while. Up to 70 countries have now contacted Trump to make a deal on tariffs. That was reported yesterday. So originally it was over 50 countries. Now it's up to 70. And people, they wonder, well, what if a lot of these countries do extremely little trade with the United States? I'm sure a lot of them do very little trade, but the point of it is you do have some. Listen, when you're talking about think about this. 2 of our biggest trading partners, our 2 biggest, I believe. Some reports say, well, China's in there as well, but it's Mexico and it's Canada. And they both say, we'll do a renegotiation of a trade deal with 0 tariffs on United States goods. And I said, well, listen, we have to wait for the Canadian election to happen, but that's in the pipeline. So if that's in the pipeline and you've got all these dynamics with the Japanese saying we're ready to renegotiate, now you've got Taiwan saying, you've tariffed us. We're not, because they didn't get hit with tariffs on semiconductors. Those were excluded. So that's important. But even Taiwan, the stuff that they've said, Trump hit them with a tariff, and then they said, we're not going to tariff the United States back, and we're still going to invest into the United States because they know they need the United States support when it comes to what China is doing to them, and they want to be on the United States good side relative to China. And because we've got a trade war brewing with China right now, that's a long time coming. And so Taiwan wants the support of the United States. And so they're saying, we're going to be nice. We don't care that you're hitting us with a huge tariff. I mean, Trump, we know how big of an industry the semiconductors are within Taiwan. It's very nice for Trump not to have a tariff on the semiconductors. Also, we're very reliant on the semiconductors, to be fair. And that's why we're trying to change it. That's why Biden put in the CHIPS Act, but there was no actual investment. So Trump forced the investment. That's why Taiwan, under Trump, invested over $100 billion immediately right after Inauguration Day, like a few weeks later. Boom, $100 billion. Some reports say it's $170 billion investment into semiconductor production in the United States. That didn't happen under Biden. Just because they had the CHIPS Act in place doesn't mean there for sure will be domestic production. There has to be a reason for the domestic production. And that reason is through Trump threatening tariffs on semiconductors. But the point of it is this. you've got all these countries wanting to come to the table. These people freak out. They look, oh, one day the stock market's way down. Look, I agree. When it comes to looking at the stock market, when you have two very negative days and then you've got, the Saturday, Sunday close and then Monday, you don't want it to be terribly negative. And it was basically even. I think the NASDAQ was down 0.7, 0.8% yesterday. And look, when you're talking about 104% tariff on China, there's probably going to be some more turmoil within the stock market. But I tell people, it's a multi-facet thing to where most people don't even know that the debt refinancing and doing that at a lower interest rate. And now there's things coming out saying there might be an emergency cut. And they're trying to have this victory lap about the 10-year yield. Oh, the yield is back up now. Well, yeah, because the Chinese and other foreign countries sold all their treasuries. So it rose. It's a shock thing that's going to go back down. So, and also with inflation down, and it's probably going to stay down for the foreseeable future. They say, ooh, with the tariffs, inflation's going to go up. Well, no, we don't even know the tariffs that are going to remain in place versus the negotiations. You've got 70 countries wanting to negotiate with Trump. Now, I don't know how many deals are going to be made through that. But if you've got all these countries willing to negotiate, I can pretty much guarantee there will be some deals. And Trump has said there's going to be some deals with these countries in terms of negotiating a proper fair trade agreement, which the administration can swing as a win because you're inevitably talking about lower barriers for U.S. products in these foreign markets. And that's eliminating the VATs. That's eliminating everything we talk about when it comes to trade barriers, not necessarily tariffs only, because that's another thing that they're dishonest about. They're like, well, Trump is lying. He said it's a reciprocal tariff, but no, it's just the deficit that we have with these countries. Yeah, because a lot of the countries don't even use tariffs as a way to hurt our competitiveness in their markets. They use other things. They use other trade barriers. So that's a big part of it. So you can't just look at the tariff that other countries have on U.S. goods. It's other things on top of it. So it's multifaceted. And this is something that we know Trump has really pushed for, but it's all this fear-mongering and, oh, the market is terrible. And I'm not going to gaslight people and say, well, don't care about the market, whatever. Obviously, the market is a reflection on the health of the economy to a degree. I mean, you could just, we're talking about like short-term growth. You could have a very unhealthy market and it could go up because of the printing of money. But the point of it is the economy will for sure get better, undoubtedly, unless something crazy happens that we can't foresee in terms of like a crazy war. But Trump is trying to end the wars. That's the whole point. The Middle East situation is a little bit different with Iran. But, I mean, the war with Ukraine and Russia, it's very complicated. We're trying, there's like a temporary ceasefire on certain things. We'll see if that ends. But there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline that's going to help strengthen the economy. The rate cuts need to happen. If Trump didn't do this, if he didn't force them down, there would be this 2.5, 3-year arguing session with Powell about doing it and lowering the rates, and we'd finally get it lowered in 2026. We don't want that. We want it lowered as soon as possible. The rates need to come down. So the rates are being forced down. And the 10-year yield is hopefully being forced down as well, even though it did tick up yesterday. And a lot of people are not happy about that. And it is surprising because it's not like the market boomed or rebounded completely. See it tick up. It's not a great economic indicator, but I think there's other things at play when it comes to that. And you're talking about a 1 or a 2 day sample of, oh, it's up to, 0.3%. I mean, it's too much of a short-term look at it. You need to let it play out over months and see. And hopefully it'll continue to go down. But I think with these tariffs, it's all these countries trying to negotiate. It's huge tariffs on China. And it's not like these other countries can band together against the United States and create, because remember, originally it was reported that it was like, oh, Japan and China and South Korea, all these countries are going to come together to have a response against the United States. It does not look like that's happening. It looks like they're all trying to negotiate with the United States different trade deals that will be more beneficial for U.S. goods in these markets, which can be swung as a huge win for Trump. The Chinese tariffs, I mean, obviously the 104% tariffs, I don't think are going to stay on. This was just a 50% reciprocal to counter China's 34% reciprocal on us after we imposed the 34% tariff after the 20% tariff, which Trump announced early in his term. That was part of the announcement when we were going after both Mexico and Canada. And China was also in that. And then China also got hit with the Liberation Day tariffs. And then China now, after they say they're going to do 34%, we're going to hit them with 54%. So we are really going after the Chinese when it comes to this trade situation. And I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations. China's probably going to negotiate theirs down. I mean, if they take their reciprocal off of us, we're going to take the 50% off of them. But they want to show it, this is them being completely bullied at this point. And Trump can do this because of the deficit we have with them. Now, there's always trade-offs. Yes, they produce things at lower prices in certain sectors. So you are talking about, if you're not going to rely on China, there are going to be higher prices on certain things. You really can't predict the exact rise. But the point of it is we have to cut this unhealthy relationship we have with the Chinese because it's not sustainable. And we are powering the Chinese move up the totem pole to being the potential #1 superpower in the world. We're trying to nip that in the bud, at least stall it to a degree. To me, it's all relative. I mean, they have a much higher population than the United States, so them being above us in terms of overall GDP wouldn't be shocking. I mean, you wouldn't want it to happen just as a normal American. You want to be #1, I guess, but that's where you start talking about sacrificing culture for the betterment of the country's GDP or like numbers. When they talk about like importing all the H-1Bs and all the immigration, just, you got to stay above the Chinese. That's where it becomes a bit of a problem. But this is huge. These 70 countries. I mean, a lot of this is going to be negotiated out of. I said that's what this is going to happen, but I don't predict Trump with tariffs because it's impossible. You don't know what he's going to do. But we can surmise that most of these are going to be negotiated out of. But a lot of them are going to stay as well because he does want domestic production to come back to the United States. That's why he's hammering China, because of the amount of trade we do with them, because of the deficit we have with them. And we'll have to see. I mean, the EU, how about the European Union and all those countries saying we're ready to negotiate 0 for 0? It's a little bit more complicated than 0 for 0 in terms of tariffs on each country. Just everyone eliminating them. They're going to have to eliminate other trade barriers as well. But there's a lot of countries ready to come to the negotiating table with Trump. And the problem that I see in terms of the liberal spin will be, well, Trump didn't realize the market was going to be this. This is what liberals will say. They'll say, well, Trump didn't know the market was going to react this negatively, so he's panicking and making all these deals with countries to get out of this tariff idea, which has been deemed a failure. Well, no, this is a strategic negotiation with countries to give the United States better competitiveness in foreign markets. That's what this is. So just say that when they say that, because they're going to say, oh, Trump is panicking because he didn't know the markets were going to go down this much, and he's realizing his tariff plan was bad. Well, no, he's keeping the tariffs in place and strategically on countries, and he's hammering China, and maybe he'll keep it in place on everyone. I don't want to predict, but I'm just saying it seems like there's going to be negotiations, and there's going to be trade agreements with these countries that are better for the United States. And so, by the way, here's another thing. You have to, and I'm not saying this to gaslight people, but when you're talking about the turmoil in the economy and the stock market, you're going to have immediate lower inflation, preferably, but you should have lower inflation. You should have a lower 10-year yield, and you should, as a byproduct of that, be able to cut the interest rates, which is what Trump has wanted and one of the top things that Trump has said since his inauguration. Even before then, he wants the interest rates cut. So it's all a byproduct of this turmoil. You get it cut. This is all the first 3-4 months of Trump's administration. It's all happening. This is the foundation to the economic plan and the revival within the United States. But there's all this choppiness right now. There's 10 different things happening. You get the rates lower, you refinance at a lower interest rate in 2026. I mean, if there's $6 trillion, they say $9 trillion that has to be refinanced. We're going to be adding $700-800 billion to the debt in refinanced debt alone. So see, it's a number of different factors at play when it comes to what Trump is doing and how he's moving with these tariffs. And he is, to a degree, manipulating the market to force the Fed to cut interest rates. So all of this is going on. And that's just the response you got to have to these people, because these people, it's just this constant, well, Trump is doing this terrible thing and stock market's going down. No. Guys, when Trump says he's going to tariff every country, he thinks the stock market is going to boom. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. He knows it's going to go down. He's forcing it down to cut the interest rates, because that is a key thing. And also, short-term inflation will go down. They say, oh, tariffs are going to cause inflation. How do you know how many countries Trump's going to negotiate out of these tariffs? How can you even predict the amount of tariffs that are going to stay in place long enough to actually see potential inflation, which is really not inflation? They say, well, it's because it's rising prices, it's inflation. No, that's not really what inflation is. Inflation is printing more money that devalues your own money. If there's a certain sector that goes up in terms of everyday prices just because we're producing things in the United States, it's not inflation. It's not like your money is becoming less valuable in every purchasing situation as a consumer. It would just be one sector. It becomes less valuable because they have to raise the prices because all the things are being produced in the United States. So see how they manipulate these terms to make it seem like Trump is going to cause all this inflation and everything like that. I mean, how is Trump's approval rating on inflation -20? Inflation's gone down. If there's one thing that Trump should be approved of, it's inflation. Inflation is down. It's at like a 5-year low. Trueflation, which is a more accurate measurement than what the Fed looks at, it's at like 1.1%, which is a 5-6-year low dating back to his amazing economy in 2018, 2019 when we had low inflation. It was like 2% or under, and we had the low interest rates. And Trump is trying to get us back there, but there's going to be choppiness. But if you want to get back there as soon as possible, it's a radical seismic change. Now, you can criticize Trump for tariffing every single country, but again, this is how these countries do it. China will use other countries as safe havens to ship their product there, and then that product gets shipped to the United States with 0 tariffs, and that's how they do it. So you have to tariff everything. They're like, why is Trump tariffing penguins? Well, no, it's because the countries use the uninhabited islands, if there's no tariffs on them, as a manipulative. I mean, and they'll use those islands and say that, this is how we're doing it, so the tariffs aren't on those islands, and they're able to ship it from those. I mean, this is all. They're like, oh, it's AI. No, it's not AI. They said Trump came up with the tariffs through AI. They say Trump doesn't know what tariffs are. This is someone going back. I mean, he's on like Oprah Winfrey in 1985 or whatever, 1887, talking about the just trading situation and how it's not free trade at all. This dates back 30, 40 years. Trump's an expert on trade. He knows what he's doing. He's got people who are just complete phenomenal economic experts, and this is why this is happening. And so, of course, there's 70 countries ready to do this right now. Oh, but Trump is crashing the economy for this. No. Well, it's strategic. Number one, it's strategic. You have to do it to be able to get the rates lower, to get the 10-year yield lower. And they're like, the yield is up. Yeah, because the Chinese are pissed off. They're selling all of their treasuries. It's a short-term spike. So see, we can explain all of this away. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.